reactions to what I say could be recorded. Don't worry about it. Obviously, everybody's got their laptops. Everybody remote has their laptops. So we're all set there. One thing to note in Cloud Skills Boost is you get these badges. So if you go into your profile, it can actually show off all the things you've done. So if you wanted to show to someone, hey, I've done all these awesome Kubernetes things. I know what I'm talking about. If you're looking for a job or a promotion, you could show this to your manager and say, hey, look at this. And so you get these on your actual Google profile inside Cloud Skills Boost when you complete these things. And I know that this text is way too small to read, but basically, all sorts of stuff around security, networking, machine learning, analytics, you name it. There's all these badges you can get, which is a collection of these courses you complete. And they'll say, yeah, you know these things. You guys are wicked smart. And so what is a professional cloud developer? So it is worth noting that there are several tracks here. There are a bunch of them, really. There is associate cloud engineer, which is a bit easier. You can see what we're talking about here. It's about 6 months or so experience is what they're looking for there. Professional is, about 3 years in industry, a year hands-on. So it is going deeper. So if you're a practitioner, you should probably find professional, straightforward. If you're just like brand new to cloud and everything, associate might be a little bit better path for you. That said, the associate one is like professional light. If you went through what we're doing, you would just knock the associate one out of the ballpark. Of course, they're not all technical. You can be a digital cloud leader. That is not in scope for what's being done under this overall project we're in, which is called the Road for Google Developers. But if you see one of these that we're not doing, do note a lot of the other GDG groups around the country are doing other groups. So like if you wanted to be a cloud architect, there's a group starting that right now. You wouldn't be in person, but you could dial into, I don't know where they are, but say Chicago or someplace, and you could join them. So there's a lot of groups doing these different pieces right here. And, we're doing cloud developer, that's more generic. If you did something very specific, like networking, going very deep in networking, security, machine learning, data, there's also other options out there. I know myself personally, after I do this one, I want to go get the architect one, for example. And it does kind of build on itself, right? Like if you know how to do all this stuff, then the cloud architect's just a little more on top of that. So they can be a bit of an accretion there. And then there's workspace administrator. Are you a workspace administrator, Lucas? A certified workspace administrator yet?
I am.
Okay.
That is the other cert that I have.
Great fame and fortune are yours. Oh, and I didn't mention the DevOps certification as well. So, again, what is it besides this really cool emblem that you get to put on your LinkedIn account? We're really trying to talk about how do you build apps in the cloud? Do you know how to do that, right? Have you actually worked with all the tools, the services? Don't forget, there's a lot of stuff in the cloud, right? There's networking, there's security, there's databases, there's applications. So getting you the experience to stitch those things together and to make it, a true, codified application. And also, how do you operation, right? Things don't always work. Do you know what to do when they don't work, right? Well, that's some of the stuff we covered. And pulled out in bullet points again. We're also talking about highly scalable applications, right? We're not just setting up one server and putting a pet store application on it, right? We're talking about using serverless tools that can spin up one instance or 1,000 instances, things that can help you scale to actually really big production-worthy applications. And also that they're worth noting here, many other cloud services that we'll touch on because Google has, I don't know, how many do they have? Focus, hundreds? There's many things you can integrate with. And the final thing I have to give a shout out to is application monitoring. When you deploy something to the cloud, you got to make sure it's working, right? So it doesn't break in the middle of the night. That in Google Cloud's done with Stackdriver. Mabel is founded by the folks that made Stackdriver and sold it to Google. And then they left and they came and founded another company. So we might touch on monitoring and things like that a little bit because it's a pain for the office. But it's a really awesome tool, the cloud monitoring suite that's built into GCP. It actually is probably the easiest bullet point here to get through. And some things to note about why should you be certified. We already touched on it a little bit, but me personally, you learn a ton of stuff. Even if you already know a lot of this stuff, you're going to learn a lot more by going through it. You're going to learn all the little gaps and stuff you didn't know that you didn't know. It's great to get that recognition again for your resume, for LinkedIn, or even if you're internally trying to go up a role or something to test that I can do all these things. And Also, this isn't a guarantee, but just a fun fact. When O'Reilly did their salary survey, O'Reilly, the tech book publisher, did their salary survey for 2022. They found that Google Cloud certifications were the highest paid certifications in the industry. I think the highest paid one was actually Cloud Architect. As you can see, Lucas here has a private jet, a castle or two, and an island. But he's being so kind as to join us today. But these are all great reasons, to look at getting the certifications. So, folks might be wondering, what does it look like, the plan to get certified? This is it broken down into 6 weeks. It doesn't mean that 6 weeks from now you guys go take an exam, right? Life happens. We'll talk a little bit, a few weeks in, where we want to move this around. Like week 6 would fall around Thanksgiving. I don't know you folks, I might be going somewhere to get turkey. So we might slide some of these around a little bit to give folks more room. But the whole idea is when we get to the end here, you feel like, okay, we've covered a lot of material. Maybe I can sit down for an evening or two, study some, and then take this exam. We've broken it down into each week here. And so we have a few things here. You'll see different types of on-demand training and hands-on lab practice. And basically, there's just different areas that are topics for the exam mapped to some of the labs. So for example, if you click through here and, I'll bring that back in a second. Create and manage cloud resources is actually, a lab here in Quick Labs. Let me make this bigger so everybody can read it. And you'll see that this is what they call a quest. A quest gets you a badge. Then a quest is multiple labs. And it's worth noting, some of these things say 40 minutes or an hour. You can usually do them in much less time. But you don't want to just run through them and copy paste, right? You want to really understand what's it doing, why am I running this command? But this is the sort of stuff that you can really do on your own time. And when you finish going through it, you generally have a really good feel for how do all the tools work, how does the technology get stitched together. So I think someone was trying to take a screenshot, so I'll put this back up. So that's what it breaks down to. And, basically, we'll go through some of these together, but these are the different materials and different categories we're trying to cover each week.
One thing I'd say is it really depends where you are currently in your journey. The expectation is you're not going to join this session as a complete newbie, and 6 weeks from now you're going to take the exam, as Joe said. If you're someone who's pretty close, then the 6 weeks could just be boom, boom, boom. Now you're over the edge, you're ready to go. Or it could be that this is the beginning of some time that you're going to spend with some hands-on work, doing more labs in your own time in order to get your skills up. But the goal is that after you spend some time with us, hopefully you're much closer to being able to get ready to get certified.
Correct. And again, all these resources we're handing out here, you get 90 days access to these things. So it doesn't mean that on Thanksgiving you go get certified or else, right? It means, the next, 3 months, try to find time to work through these things, and you can still obviously take the exam in February or March or whenever. It's just the Quick Labs things. They last for the 90-day period. And obviously our GDG group will be here in 90 days. It will be here in 100 days. You can always reach out to Lucas or I or the folks you're working with here. So, excuse me. So what we'd be talking about in week 2 would be the core infrastructure and sample case studies. Case studies are just something to note. Part of the way they do the cloud exam is sometimes they'll give you a case study, right? There's a car company and they want to build a system and they need to have it be scalable of this sort. And it needs to work with maybe these tools. Sorry, I'm speaking in very general terms. But then you would say, would it be better to use this with Kubernetes or Cloud Functions or a dedicated virtual machine? And there would be hints or something in that question to say, okay, oh yeah, this company makes sense to use this, or this company makes sense to use that. So they're not all just multiple choice questions VMs or not VMs. It's also kind of some inference, read the case study and understand what would make sense in a given situation. So that's why we'll also talk about case studies. With regards to week 3, again, the highly scalable pieces, and don't forget available. Something can be highly scalable and goes down a lot, GitHub, but we need something that's highly available as well as reliable. And there's a difference between availability and reliability, which we'll talk on later on. But that's what we'll talk about again, all the different ways that you can design your apps, manage them, and ship them out there. And sometimes we'll also talk about modernization, because not everything starts out as a brand new application on day one, right? Sometimes there are money makers for your company that we need to move to the cloud, right? How do we get it off on-premise to the cloud? So things of that nature. And my personal favorite, serverless. If you don't know what that term means, you will. Week 4, we'll talk about Google Cloud Services, because there's a lot more than just computers. There's a lot of services in Google Cloud, and you need to understand how to glue them all together. Because the easiest code you ever write is the code you don't write. If you can make it someone else's problem, then that's a great thing. Here at Mabel, we do that. We have a fairly small engineering team and like 80 plus services in production, because we use Google Cloud to use their services wherever we can, rather than trying to reinvent the wheel ourselves. We'll talk about working with the data, and then working with all these APIs. There's so many of them, but we'll get into those later. Finally, talk about building applications, making sure you can actually build them locally, because some of these might require some setup on a laptop. There's an awesome tool we'll get into called Cloud Shell, and there's a lot of cloud development tools that you can use, which actually mean you can do all of this in the cloud. You don't really have to work with your computer. But we'll talk about those sort of things. Talk about deploying. Again, where do you deploy? What the run times? Strategies for automation, like there's like deployment managers. There's different tools for handling all that. Because you might have heard of CI/CD, right? But productionizing an application doesn't mean doing it from your laptop. It means having something else do it automatically, and Google has a lot of great tools for that. Again, talking about monitoring. We should drag in Belcher for that one.
Yeah, seriously.
We should drag in the founder of that tool. He's sitting around the corner right now. Serverless for serverless, all these tools, there's not a lot to really say. They just work, but we'll talk about how to use that, especially with logging. I don't know if you guys ever work with cloud logging with like Splunk or Elk Stack or things like that, but Google has an equivalent that's really awesome, really powerful. Cool. So we'll just give Lucas a moment. We'll jump into the next section, and then we'll actually start doing some labs.
I'm having trouble finding you on a Slack, and I'm not a Slack person, so
You're having trouble finding me?
this group that is there, I think.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Did you go to that site or anything?
I just have a Slack on my computer.
Cool. Okay. I'm just gonna keep going with this piece so we can get some of the labs, but you guys please keep working with James. So what is the exam? I don't know about you guys. I haven't been in college for a long time. Denise is a little closer to college than me, but I haven't taken an exam in a really long time. So when you hear the certification and exam, I think a lot of people might just kind of think, oh, that's really unpleasant. It's not that bad an exam, isn't it? 60 questions, Lucas?
Mm-hmm.
Only 60 questions, 2 hours. Right. So that means 120 minutes to answer 60 questions. You get 2 minutes per question. You take it on a computer, and you just pick the answer. You go on. Nothing fancy. This isn't like a CCIE lab with Cisco where they give you a pile of networking equipment and you have to plug it all in, right? This is just multiple choice questions in a web browser.
Some of them are, as you mentioned, about the case studies. So, you have a customer like this with this particular problem. Which of these 4 solutions is the right one? And the options are not like BigQuery, SQL, Firestore, and something else. The options are like these 4 solutions or these 4 solutions, and you have to like really think about what did that paragraph say about, what this customer needed and which of these combined things is going to solve for that. So they can be rather thoughtful questions that they don't require you to write anything. You select 1 out of 4 answers, but they can require some in-depth thinking. They're not just like math questions or anything like that.
And it is worth noting, at the end of it, the computer then says you passed or you didn't pass. It's the way they do it. If you didn't pass, don't worry, all is not lost. They ask you wait 2 weeks, and then you can try again. And then it's like a month, and then there's some point at which they say please stop. All right, but within a short period of time, you can like take 2 weeks, join a book club, forget about cloud for a little while, go back, and I'm sure you're gonna be in a great headspace and you'll nail it. And again, you'll basically know at the end if you're good to go. You can do these remotely. We don't have the links up yet, but there's a company called Web Assessor that does these, and their in-person company is, what is it? Crypto
Criterion.
So
Not the ones with the collection.
no,
But different.
Criterion with a K. Anyway, you can do it remote, which means you can just sit at home. It is worth noting though that, like, you know, if halfway through your internet cuts out, I'm sorry, you gotta like take the exam again. You know, so me personally, I'm gonna go to one of the testing centers right here in Boston and just sit there and just knock it out. I believe it's the same price to take it whether you do it there or there. But just noting, there are places you can do it in person. I don't trust my cat. I know he's gonna get up there. He's gonna like break the computer or something. I don't, like, with 1 minute to go. But if you want to do it remote, you can also do it at home. Just make sure you have a quiet place, because like there's a proctor. Like if you're sitting there with your, you know, and your spouse is right next to you typing, they're not going to be cool with that, right? They might ask you to put some software on the computer to make sure that, you know, you're not cheating. But you can do it remote. You can do it in person. And luckily here in Boston, we actually have several sites that you can do it in person. And again, this is something you do on your time, and this isn't something that's directly coordinated by this group. We're just trying to get you ready to that point. Awesome. So let's talk about our study plan. You know, what do we actually need to learn? And I'm just going to pull up one thing real quick. This is just, I want to make sure this is sharing. Yep. If you guys ever just search, you know, professional cloud developer, you know, if you ever want to know what's actually on the exam, you know, we're talking about all these things here, but if you just Google professional cloud developer, this is the official guide from Google right here. And if you want to actually go sign up for your exam, you can just click register now.
This is literally the Google wrote this guide, and they provided us with the content for this series. So it's just based on the study guide.
We don't have the answers. We don't know what's on the exam, question wise.
But the idea is, like, for some of us, myself included, maybe especially, it's hard to like make the time to get yourself like at home to go through the study guide and learn all the things. But with a structured event like this, with other people that are doing it at the same time, it's like, okay, finally I get it done, because I'm like, looking forward to this weekly event. Exactly.
So what I wanted to show here is, if you want to know officially what's on the exam, I'll go put this in Slack. 1 second. Let's drop this in Slack. Official guide. I never type when people are watching. All right. Just go back over here. So what I'm trying to show here is, oops. I'm trying to show here is this is officially what Google says you should know. Okay. Now, if you think about the fact that we're talking about for 6 weeks, it's not that much. But they're going to say stuff like, you know, how do you handle data, right? Okay. Design a storage key structure for high write applications. Well, that probably means you don't want to have all your keys be the same. We'll talk about that later on and why that's important. But you'll see there's not a heck of a lot here, but they're just saying, okay, you know what? If you're writing storage, you have to understand that sometimes you want stuff to be cleaned up, right? Time limited access, right? If I send Dinesh a private document, maybe I don't want him to be able to read it 6 years from now, right? There's basically things like that. But maybe if I'm a bank, I want to hang on to it for 7 years because I'm legally required to. So I need to consider data retention requirements. I don't want to get ahead of all of our studying, but basically it's all laid out here if you guys want to see what exactly Google has defined. And when you are ready, you can click register. We're not doing this tonight, but this is the third-party company that's doing the exam, right? So Google isn't saying that you know this. The third-party company independently is saying, I have talked. I'm going to keep it on Dinesh. You've talked to Dinesh, and we have determined that his brain is of the right size and volume, that he is a cloud expert. That's how you would do it right here. You go in here, we're not going to do it right now, and then you'd actually say like 2 o'clock next Tuesday, game time, and you make your appointment. And that's what the end game looks like here. Okay, so back to our presentation. So all of our study plans descend from that document that Google made. And it is worth noting your exam, once you take it and you are certified, it's good for 2 years. Okay. But it's only good for 2 years because they keep putting stuff in the cloud. Like if you said, what did Google Cloud look like 3 years ago and today? Oh, thank you. I'm hearing it's 3 years now. This is excellent.
Yeah, that's a recent update. It's true that the content is going to change frequently because of how frequently like the actual technology changes. Like they can't be giving you a exam about data store if that doesn't exist as a product anymore or whatever. But as far as they've established enough like clout in the industry that the exam, the skills that it tests for are still viable and useful after that time. So they've extended the length of the exam. And it's pretty cool. Like you don't just get like a thing you can print out and put on your wall if you want. You get a digital certificate that you can put on your LinkedIn. So when people click on it, it like goes to the assessor's site and it's like, yes, we vouch for the fact that this person has this certificate. So if you're trying to get a job or whatever and you send someone that link, it's not just like you made your own PDF of the certificate and you put a stamp on it. It's like, it's a legit thing that holds some weight to it. And as people have been talking about, you probably already mentioned this, but it is industry wide. It's the Google professional certs are becoming one of the most high paying certs on the market. I think they say the cloud architect is like the top.
Yeah, if you want to see that, the link is right here. We can jump into that, but Google Cloud, what do they say here? The largest salaries are associated with the Google Cloud Professional Cloud Architect.
Must be nice.
Which, yeah, I need to get one of those. That looks nice. So again, we're not saying you're instantly going to become famous and rich by taking this class or these certs, but they are different than the sort of thing that you might have found that, that I took in my company where I got my cloud security training and I pinned it to the refrigerator at home. And, my son knows that I'm really good with security. This is a formal third-party officially validated certification. As we mentioned, so 3 years it's good for. And the other thing that's really awesome is the clock starts on October 4th. Okay. Every year they update that guide. We didn't want to get you guys studying until after the guide came out. So we didn't want to say, oh, I studied. Oh, they just changed it. So we're working off the most recent guide. Okay, so obviously when we're doing these sorts of problems, we're trying to find the answers. You do want to think about the business problem, and that is to say, when we're trying to, so we'll just say, decide if you use data store or spanner. Don't worry if you don't know what those are. You have to really think about, people are making money with this application, right? The application exists for a business reason. So understand why you're actually doing what you're doing, and then try to come up with the technology that gets there. Don't go the other way around. And obviously, we are just trying to learn stuff here. I started studying a few weeks ago, and I was like, oh my gosh, there are things I didn't know. I had this backwards. And at work, I'm like, hey, did you know that you can do this? Like, I'm actually learning a lot more than even though I have been a practitioner for a while. So hopefully you guys will learn a lot. And obviously, we do want to leverage the community. So if you guys have questions, things like that, please reach out. As if you're at home and you're stumped on something, we got the Slack. Just throw something in there, and I'm sure someone will be able to work with you. Cool. So how about some sample questions? Lucas is really certified here, so we're going to pick on him to see if he can solve some of these. Well, we can ask.
Well, I don't have the developer certification.
Oh,
just to be
geez.
clear, so
Okay, he's not certified here.
out of my wheelhouse.
I'll read through this first one, and then we'll try to figure it out. So your company has a successful multiplayer game. Okay, multiplayer. So it sounds like we're going to have a bunch of stuff happening. It's popular. Is there a popular multiplayer game that happens to be hosted at Google Cloud?
I know that there's one I remember hearing about that Pokemon.
Pokemon Go, yeah.
Yeah.
Pokemon Go runs on Google Cloud.
Yeah.
This company wants to expand their regions. They need to add new features so users can trade points, and it needs to work around the world. Okay, that's a very interesting piece, right? Around the globe. So we can't just put this thing in Iowa. And ooh, MySQL, yeah, it's not able to keep up. All right, so it sounds like we need a different database. And your company wants to migrate to something with global consistency, high availability across all the regions. So I'm just curious. And anyone in here have any thoughts, or which of these sound good?
Cloud SQL and Cloud Spanner, because both are relational databases for GCP.
Definitely. Yep, they're definitely relational.
Out of those two, something that can horizontally scale. So maybe Cloud Spanner would be, the best approach for this particular
I
question.
think we got a winner here.
Yeah, I think like in this, when you read this, if like assuming you know even what these four options are, which is obviously a prerequisite to being able to get this question right, you at least need to know what one of them is, right? But like what they're pointing out is global consistency and high availability across regions. And so of those databases that have, like you said, the relational database aspect, Spanner's the one that offers that capability.
So we also had at least 3 votes in the remote audience. Thanks, guys, for Spanner. Smart folks.
Oh, excellent.
You'll also find, this isn't official, but with a lot of Google stuff recently, the answer is always Spanner. So Spanner is like an internal technology that they brought external. But what's the right answer here? Bigtable is not a SQL database, so probably not what you want. BigQuery is a SQL compatible database, but it is not meant for like online processing and low latency, right? So it's out. You'll generally find on the exam that there's 2 almost right answers and then 2 that are a bit further afield. So when you're looking at it, you'd be like, okay, these 2 don't make sense. All right, now I got to flip that coin, right? Cloud SQL, though, is just taking MySQL or Postgres and running it for you. So that doesn't get us this massive global scale. But Spanner is actually global, and they even have globally distributed transactions. There's an atomic clock in every data center, and they use it to like synchronize them all to the nanosecond. It's some pretty crazy technology. So
I think the way you answered that question was perfect, especially given Joe's explanation afterwards that usually you can eliminate 2 right off the bat, and you're down to just 2. And then you're like, what is distinctly different about these 2 solutions, and how does that difference relate in some way to the question?
Yeah.
And it's just a perfect answer.
And we have some feedback from online as well that yes, Spanner is expensive compared to other solutions here. But if it's like if your company is like, I have to have this functionality, then probably.
I mean, let's be clear. If you have a global application that people are using all over the world 24/7, then you probably are in the category of customer that can justify Spanner. If you have like a blog, that you post to once a month and someone reads once a month, then yeah, you don't need that. You can do that a million other ways.
Yeah. So if they said something like, it needs to work globally some of the time and be sort of consistent, then yeah, we could probably get away with Cloud SQL. One thing to note here, though, we talked about the changes that come into the cloud, right? There's a new thing called AlloyDB, and it's not on this list, right? Because it's brand new. It just came out. And so that's where, even for this year, we're talking about, not necessarily the bleeding edge of cloud. Just to note that. You'll note that they don't fold in that brand new stuff until a year or 2 later, as far as the test material is concerned. Awesome. Well, great jobs, everybody. Someone did ask if Firebase would work. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend Firebase. It only goes up to 100,000 users, fortunately.
There's a few things about Firestore, for example, that would not work. One, it's not a relational database; it's a document store.
Yeah, Firestore is a document store.
It's also totally
Non-SQL.
regional. So when you spin up a Firestore database in your project, you have to select which region it's in, and that's what region it's in. So making that a multi-region solution requires
It has
multiple projects.
1 megabit write limit.
Yep, and there's only a 10 meg size limit on each document.
Oh yeah, we're getting into the weeds now, but good question about Firebase. Firestore is pretty cool. Final thing I'll say is, if I remember this correctly, right now Data Store is running on an emulation layer on top of Firestore, which is built on Spanner. And I think everything runs in Bigtable. So it's all turtles all the way down. Okay, another question here. Let's see. Our company wants to expand analytics. Okay, analytics, that sounds like a keyword here. One of the new use cases requires your data analysts. Okay, so data analysts, right? We need almost normal human beings, not engineers, okay, to analyze events using SQL in a real-time basis. Oh, near real time. So that's probably important. Near, it doesn't have to be real time. And we expect rapid growth. We want to use managed services as much as possible, aka money is no option, no object, excuse me. So what should we do here for letting a bunch of analysts run analytics almost real time and be ready to handle a lot more stuff in the future to have a lot of room to grow? Let's see here. So what do we got? Create a Kafka instance. Okay. Well, that sounds like I have to do work. I don't want to do that. That doesn't sound like a managed service. If I have to start building Kafka and all this complicated stuff, that doesn't sound like fun. Let's see. Create a pub sub topic and a subscription. All right. Stream our events into pub sub. Let data flow push them into cloud storage. Okay. I'm not sure if our analysts can actually just readily access stuff in cloud storage. Cloud storage is just a big bucket, right? So if I told my analysts, hey, there's 2 billion files over there, good luck. That doesn't sound like an easy thing for them to use.
They probably need to add some other tool into
We need some other managed service. Yes. What if instead we streamed all these from PubSub into Dataflow and then put them in BigQuery? Well, BigQuery is a highly expandable, almost real-time, SQL compatible tool for analyzing stuff that an analyst could use. That sounds pretty good. Folks remotely are saying CCC. Okay.
We haven't even checked out D yet.
Oh, crap. Wait, we got to check for D. PubSub topic, subscription, events, go to PubSub, go to Dataflow, and then they go into Firestore in data store mode. Oh,
old style Firestore?
yeah, okay. We're partying like it's 2010 now. Data store is basically a document store. It's like it's a schemaless store. So that's not going to work very well. It doesn't run SQL. Actually, in data store, you can just say, give me thing where ID equals X. You can't even say where ID equals X or Y. So probably not D. As Norbert points out, thank you, Norbert, we do need SQL. So C sounds like the best answer here. And again, where we're saying that we're not thinking about the bleeding edge, they just released the ability to go straight from PubSub to BigQuery. But we're not going to worry about that right now because we're partying like it's 2020 right now. But this is definitely the way to get there as far as the answer on this question. And again, this is where we got to pull this apart because each one of these little pieces, right? SQL, near real time, rapid growth. Analysts have to be able to use it as opposed to an engineer creating something for everything you need. So that's where you're going to be thinking about the analysts, the business use case, as we spoke earlier. So let's see. What is the right answer? Oh, it's C. Okay. Okay, so now just pretend you did 58 more of those and you went home.
I will say that for both exams that I've taken, and I have taken the Cloud Architect exam at least 3 times, on average, I complete the test in 1 hour, and then I spend the last hour just like second guessing myself. And more often than not, I'll tell you, if I go back afterwards in that second hour and I take one of the answers that I answered and I change it, I most likely changed it to be incorrect. And usually it's better for me to just like be done with it and end. But the time that they give you is not meant to be an issue. It's not meant that you're pressed for time as part of the exam. It's just like people finish in 2 hours. That's why they give you 2 hours to do it. So you don't have to necessarily expect that it's definitely going to take 2 hours. If you finish before that, it's fine. You have some time to double check your answers. And one thing about double checking your answers is like you saw for those 2 questions, if you weren't really clear on whether Spanner was like the globally scalable database or if it was the real-time database, like you couldn't remember that, there might be another question like 20 questions later which in the text of the question, it gives away that little tidbit. Because it'll be like, oh, Spanner globally, and you're like, oh, wow, like that was the key piece I was missing from before. So the test will let you, as you're taking it, like just mark some questions, like to flag them to go back to. You could be like, this one, I'm spending too much time stressing on this one. I'm just going to flag it, and I'm going to continue with the test. I'll come back to this at the end.
So it's not like some tests where like that's the only 2 minutes
Right.
you get.
No,
and
you
get
can come
the
back to that
gone.
question later if you really think you're stuck on it, or if you think you might read something later in the test that's going to enlighten you on what you were trying to do with that one. So yeah, the timing is not supposed to be the stressful part.
You're so right though. When I was taking a practice test, everything I went back and changed to my practice test, I moved to wrong. So trust your intuition. And Norbert's saying the same thing. Yeah, just ship it. So it is worth noting though that I think that they have a bank of questions, so you're not always going to get all the same stuff, and there isn't like an official like you passed this percentage. Like they don't say like, oh, you got 99% right? They just tell you like, boom, you passed, right? So if you're like, oh no, did I miss too many? Well, don't worry. There's just they're not going to tell you what the right answers are or how many. They're just going to tell you if you passed.
And there is a large bank. Like I was involved in the alpha before they released the exam, and everyone who took the alpha test all had a different bank
And
of
it's longer,
questions.
isn't it too?
Yeah. But there's maybe like, I don't know what the number is, but it could be there's like 500 questions, and each person gets like a set of 60 to do. So that way, even if you took the test like 10 times, you still have not seen every question. You couldn't record them all and make a study guide to help people cheat or anything. So that's why the test has so many questions.
Definitely. So again, we don't want to like make it sound scary. It's not all about the test. It's about really understanding like the material, and then you guys will nail the test after that. So again, our next step, we got the learning plan. We're going to talk about the things we're going to hit. Asking everybody to attend weekly. Come in person. We got swag. We got burritos. I'm not sure what we'll have next week, or at least remotely. But the whole idea is just try to take some time and say, okay, I want to study this material. I want to learn this, and help you guys get ready to work together in our community. In this case, on Slack or in person. So again, this is the curriculum, and this is what we're trying to get done in week 1. And obviously you don't have to do everything this week. There's nobody grading you, but this is like a way to pace yourself, try to get through, and I feel like you're getting a lot done in a given time. We already shared this one, right?
Yeah, that's what I shared on
Yep.
the whiteboard, and I don't know if it got shared in the. I'll share it in the thing as well.
Okay. So again, join us in the Slack. I think that we're piling up a lot of people in there.
The Slack already.
And here, let me paste this. So let me show you something really cool.
I tested this earlier and it worked. I got a badge.
So there's like a directory of developers. I'm trying to open up mine real quick. Oops, I need to pull this with the screen here. Okay, I'll go to my profile. Come on, it's a slow website. Oops. So where do we see our? You can go there. Okay. So if you go to developers.google.com, you can see your profile. This happens to be mine. These are all my awesome badges. You can accumulate these badges, and this is your public profile, so you can show off to people that you really did this. And again, this is more than just what goes in the refrigerator. Other people can see this. They can see that you went to this conference, that you attained this level. And I'll paste in our chat over here. We can get a badge. So I'll go and get my road to Google Developers badge, and I've now got a new badge. Woohoo! Jump back over here. Let's see. But if you guys go to developers.google.com/profile, you can see yours, and there's a lot of stuff you can do in the Google developer community, which will help you accumulate more of these. And this lets you attest to people like, hey, I've got all these things, and you can check out my GitHub and my LinkedIn. You can see all the cool stuff I've done. And all the kind of journeys and stuff you do with GDG, like we're doing here, you can get badges and if you click this link, you will have the badge for this meetup. Normally, people can't get these things. You're not going to go online and find how to get this by Googling around. This is a link as you guys went to this link and we're participating. So you just click that in the chat there. I'll throw it into, Lucas can throw that into Slack there as our official Slack curator, and you can grab your badge. Again, you can grab us on Slack. There is also the GDG community. Really don't need to worry too much about this stuff. If you have an issue, you just reach out to Lucas or I, do it in the Slack. You can also escalate it if you want to GDG support, but generally it's just best to chat with us. We can probably hook you up directly. So that is it. If you guys want to drop off, you can drop off. What we're going to do now is go through a lab, try to make sure everybody can actually get through one of these labs, that your cloud skills boost, that your credits and all that are set up. So let me go and I'm going to sit back up on the deck here to, which one of these is shorter, do you think? Well, let's
That
see.
one only costs 6 credits. The other one is like 30 credits, I think.
Okay, we'll just throw in this quest here. So this is one of the quests for this week. I'll throw it in the Slack there to Lucas. But the whole idea is we're just trying to show that we can actually, get through a quick lab and everybody has got all the bells and whistles clicking away. So I'm just going to enroll in the quest. I always skip the pre-assessment. I'm not really sure what this is. I've been asked this like 30 times in the last week. What the heck? Why don't we take the pre-assessment? What do they want to know?
Is it going to change the content of the
Okay, so-
how you're assessing it?
So I'm going to skip the pre-assessment because I don't want to spend an hour right now. I'm taking another assessment, so you can skip that. Hey there. Hi.
Sorry, I'm late.
Howdy.
Hey.
So this is a late comers want to tell you, you can get on one right there. And if you join the Slack channel, it's by the top link, please. Grab yourself a burrito.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I wasn't sure I was supposed to bring a laptop, so I didn't bring one.
Well, awesome. We'll show you where to get all the links and stuff.
Okay. Thanks.
Cool. So to go back here and say, what are we doing? We're going to create cloud resources. That's the quest we're going to enroll in. I'm going to try to skip this if I can. Okay, I guess I can.
Yeah.
I'm just going to show. I'm sorry, I got a question?
So I have enroll on demand course, not enrolling quest. So I don't know where I'm wrong.
So there's like a learning path, I think is what Quick Labs calls
Yep.
a whole journey. And then within a learning path, there's quests. And then within a quest, there's individual courses.
Did you put the link in the slide?
I did. I just
I
put
did.
I put the learning path, but I didn't put the
Sorry. We need to update that
quest
link.
yet. So let me get the quest.
Yeah.
Also, whenever it was remote, yes, you can do this stuff at your leisure. What I'm going to show you right here is just one of the coolest things about this. And I know it doesn't seem cool, but when you've done it all the wrong way for years, doing it this way is so much easier. One little gotcha here is I'm in Chrome right now. I'm just going to hit Control-Shift-N, and I'm going to get an incognito window. I'm doing this because they're actually making a brand new Google user for me. It's a single-use Google user, right? And I don't want to log in under my main profile because now it's like, hey, am I Joe or am I bot25, right? So here, I'm just going to look for the Cloud Console and just Google for Cloud Console. We can take, you just go to the Google Cloud Platform. Anyway, and what we can see here is I've got this username they provided me right here. Actually, I'll use their link here. Second, so open the Cloud Console. All right, so here's my username. That's from right here. And this is a single-use Google user. When this lab ends and this clock ticks to 0, this person will cease to exist. And they give me the password. So, for example, we can put this on YouTube tomorrow. It doesn't matter because that user is gone. They can't steal anything in here, right? So you're going to get used to clicking these screens because they're making you a brand new Google account, right? So we just need to click through and say, oh, yes, I've never heard of Google before.
Yeah, each time you start a lab, it's making you an entirely new Google project, and then it gets deleted at the
Yeah.
end.
So here again, I'm saying, oh, yes, I would like to have a Google Cloud project. Thank you. And you'll see up here, right, in the corner, we are a Quick Labs. We have a brand new project, right? And if you're not familiar with Google Cloud, project is like a group. All your stuff lives in a project. And by default, all the stuff in one project can't touch stuff in the other project. This isn't a concept that Amazon has. They have accounts, but accounts are kind of more far-reaching. Like a lot of companies only have one account. Most companies have many projects in GCP. So here, you can just drop into your project. And you can see they gave us the project ID right there, So that's the ID we see up here. And here are the parameters they're giving us that they want us to do. So anyway, I'm going to scroll down here. And every Quick Lab is going to tell us, here's what you're going to do, right? So they're telling me I need to make a virtual machine. I need to create a 3-node Kubernetes cluster that's going to run something for me. And I need to make a load balancer. And if you're not familiar with the load balancer, it's something that lets a bunch of computers act as if they are one computer, right? If you run an app on your laptop, it just goes to a URL and it's on your laptop. But if I have a really big app like Twitter, I might have 10,000 computers, and I need a way to make that look like one URL. And the load balancer is what does that for me. Yes, I'm going quick here. You usually want to read this before you start, okay? And you only want to read it before you start because the clock is ticking. Usually they give you way more time than you need, but when that clock ticks to 0, all these windows close, all the users expire, all your data disappears. So, if it's something you're like not really sure about, you've never done before, I would encourage just reading through and making sure you understand what it's going to do. And here they're just saying use incognito, all that fun stuff. How to log in, but you guys have used Google before. You were born in the last 100 years, so you know about that. So now they're actually telling us about the scenario, and this is, meat and potatoes. This is where they're going to tell you what to do. And let's see what we need to do. I'm just going to skip down to the tasks and start working. A really cool thing to keep in mind is they have these buttons, and this button is going to go into the Google API, and it's going to say, did Lucas do everything right? And if you haven't done everything right, it's not going to turn green. And this is a great way to check yourself and know if you did it right. Because, if you're sitting at home with a book and you're trying to go through something, you never know if you did it right. You hope you did it right, but you never actually know. This way you get the instant feedback that you did it right. So in this case, they want me to make a new instance, and I need to give it that name. So what I do is I can go over here to, there's a great search bar. If you don't really know how to find something you want, I can just type it here. So look, I'm looking for an instance, then there's a link to VM instances. So I can go there. And I need to make a new instance. And there's an awesome button named Make Instance. So I think I'll try that out. And when you're doing a Quick Lab, they're going to tell you the names and stuff to use. When they try to grade this, they're actually going to look for that. So if I named it Awesome Computer, it's not going to pass. I need to use the value they gave me. Here I'm going to name it, Nucleus Jump Host. And they tell me a few things. It needs to be an F1 micro. So let me see where I can pick the size. Here we go. I guess I need F1 micro. Let's see here. F1 micro. What's the F series? Well, probably in the right region, though. The region?
F1 micro is the shared.
Okay.
It's an N1 generation.
N1. Oh man, that's way back. Well, F1 micro. Here we go. So, and generally, if you're doing something like this, you'll also note that there's like 500 other options here. If they don't tell you to do something different, then just use where the defaults are.
Yeah, as he said, I mean, they're going to check to make sure you did some things. So if they want you to create a VM of a certain size, then they're going to check that you made a VM with that name and that size.
Yep.
If you did that, you're good to go.
Yep. And so here we see Debian Linux is the third thing they told us. And look, the default is Debian Linux. So that's cool. Now, if this wasn't on Quick Labs, you'd actually start paying Google $4.88 an hour. So this is real computers running the real cloud. If you were doing this at home without Quick Labs, you'd be having to like spend money on your credit card to do this. Cool. So we'll create. Now it's going to make my instance for me. So let's see, what's the next thing they want to do? Boom, and we can see right here, now we have passed. They went and they checked and made sure I did that. All right, now they want me to make a Kubernetes cluster. All right.
Did you make it yet? Maybe you forgot you already made it. Should you check your progress?
Oh yeah, did I make my Kubernetes cluster?
Oh no, you didn't.
Dang it. All right, I'm going to have to figure out how to make a Kubernetes cluster. So I'm just going to search, like, I don't know, Kubernetes. Oh, Kubernetes cluster, sweet. That's pretty helpful.
It's an exam, an open book exam.
But-
These quick labs where you can just like look stuff up. You don't have to already know how to do
The
it.
actual exam is closed book. Do be aware. If you say I want to
Yeah,
Google
oh, yeah.
something, they're not cool with that.
Right, not during the test, but certainly during the lab itself.
Okay. Yeah, so
It's in the N1.
bottom of that list. N1 is the oldest generation of stuff.
Oh, manual.
Wow. We're going way back.
It's the original like Intel processors that they first rolled out.
We're going. We don't need roads. Cool. My battery's about to die, so I'm gonna sprint down the hallway real quick.
Oh no, I can't help you at all. Because I have a totally different kind of computer.
Services change from region to region. Stuff like Central is going to get the newest stuff soonest, but if you're going to deploy something globally, not every region is necessarily going to have all the coolest stuff like the tensor processors and stuff like that. The second thing here is that you want to think about availability, right? If you're a big company and they talk about you need high availability, you can't just be in Iowa, because what happens if a tornado? There's no tornadoes in Iowa, right? If a tornado comes to Iowa and knocks out that data center, then there's problems, right? So you want to have stuff potentially in multiple regions, and within each region there's zones. It'll be like U.S. Central 1A, B, C, D, and so forth. And that's within Iowa. There's different data centers. Or if the computers are in the same building, it's like logically separated. Like they have different backup power, different internet. It's all separate. So that basically one of those zones can go poof and the other one's unaffected. So noting this, because if you see stuff about high availability, disaster recovery, those are all watchwords in those questions, saying you want to have multi-zone and multi-region. Multi-region costs more than multi-zone, right? Putting stuff in Virginia and Las Vegas is going to be more challenging than putting it in Iowa, but it depends on what the customer needs. You might need to have more redundancy and more geographically dispersed assets. That's a quick aside. All we need to do for this quick lab is pick where these things are going to be. So I'm going to make a cluster, and they told us they want them in a region, right? So let's see here. They want it in the US East 1. So here, US East 1 is a region, and B is the zone. So US East 1 is a zone. So let's see. So
I
let's
believe
see.
that's in South Carolina.
Yeah. So here the zone, and they said US East 1B, right? So we pick that. Close all these things here. And did they give me a name? I don't think they gave me a cluster name, did they?
Supposed to use Hello App container. Yeah.
Okay.
Running on 8081.
So GDG Boston Rocks will be the name of our cluster, because they didn't tell me I had to name it something. And this is a container. So has anybody ever worked with Docker by chance? Okay, everybody knows what Docker is, right? Your Docker stuff has to live somewhere, right? And you can push it to Docker, and Docker will charge you, your hard-earned money. And every time you want to use those images, they'll charge you more of your hard-earned money. But Google has got something built just for you called Container Registry, and that's where you can keep our images. And since the images basically live in Google Cloud, and you're pulling them from Google Cloud to use them, then they don't charge you for it, or it's very nominal, low price. Thanks. So when you see name here, GCR.io, that's Google Container Registry. And So that means this isn't coming from Docker. This is coming from Google's container registry. And so this is the image we want to use, and we're going to pull it from Google.
In newer versions of this lab, you will see, I'm predicting right now, that they won't be using Google Container Registry. They'll be using Google Artifact Registry, which is the sort of newer, fancier version of that. An artifact registry is actually a regional product, whereas container registry is a global, a multi-regional product.
So if we're teaching to the test, it's container registry. But if you were doing something in the wild right now, they tell you to use artifact registry. Basically, it's got more bells and whistles. It's got more features. You can also store stuff like NPM packages and Java packages here, not just containers. It's your one-stop shop.
Too.
And if you use Python like Lucas, you can do it here. Yeah. Okay, so we need to make a cluster. Oops. Did I go with my cluster string? Okay, Kubernetes. I'm having too much fun here. All right, okay. Kubernetes cluster. Just like autopilot here would actually be the way to go, but autopilot's brand new, so we're not going to talk about it. Okay, so oops. Make my cluster. It's also worth noting that a Kubernetes cluster can be made regional. And then you actually say, I want zone A, B, and C, and D, or something like that. It'll actually put one of your computers in each one. And now, you actually, the master nodes, they'll put one in each one. And so you can actually have like entire data centers fail, and your job will continue to run, basically uninterrupted.
Do you have any experience with that?
Yeah. We run all our stuff here at Babel across multiple zones. And because you can have things like a stock out, there are a finite number of computers available. Remember, there's different kinds here.
I thought the cloud was infinite.
Lucas, have you ever used all Google Cloud stuff? Have you ever done that before? Lucas does this a lot.
To your earlier reference, there was a time when we were contacted by our team at Google asking us to reduce our utilization in Iowa because Iowa was where they were running the Pokemon Go application. And I was like, so you want me to do less genomics so that you guys can do more catching Pokemons? But yes, that did happen because there was some contention for the resources.
Do you want us to make the YAML here, or is this supposed to be like an autopilot container? What do you think? I know how to do this, but it's kind of, I'm looking to see if there's a wizard. It sounds like it should be easy.
Well, all it said so far is you need to create a cluster.
Yep.
Is the next step going to be that you have to deploy your hello service in the cluster, or is that all part of this one step?
It's all part of the one step. So what I'm saying is that normally this could get a little complicated, and I figure they don't mean for it to be so. That's why I was trying to see. Now, the reason this takes some time is they're actually making a whole bunch of stuff. Like an empty Kubernetes cluster actually runs a lot of stuff. And it costs, what, it was like $70, $75 a month? There's a charge for that, right? Just for the empty cluster.
Oh, you mean just for the instances and everything?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is one thing about the code labs. Sometimes, like, maybe do it while you're making dinner or something. Like a cluster here can actually take some time to run in the background.
That's a risky proposition because, you know, if you get distracted, then the lab ends and you have to start all over again. So you still need to be
sorry.
They're at least engaged enough to be able to complete it within the time.
I thought you were going to say, what if like you burned something in the oven because you were focusing on the lab?
Well, that's why you shouldn't be doing both of them at the same time.
Okay, well, don't do what I said. Sorry.
Can we run the lab multiple times?
Yeah, so in a normal situation where you're buying credits as a normal person, customer, then you can do that, but then you're using up credits for each time you do the lab. Because the way this whole thing is set up, and one of my ex-coworkers, Will, was the one who created Quick Labs. I don't remember if I mentioned that. And sold it to Google, just like your friend did that with Stackdriver. But the idea here is each of these labs takes a certain amount of time, and there's a certain amount of resources that get created in the back end. So like during the course of this 1 hour lab that Joe's doing, he's making a bunch of VMs and some storage and some load balancers, and those have a cost associated with it. So the amount of credits that a lab costs is correlated to like how much the actual compute resources and stuff will cost. So when you do the lab multiple times, you're consuming those resources again. So that's how that works. When you're part of this situation where you have like 500,000 credits in the pool, then you could do it again because it's going to make it, instead of 528,000 credits, it's 527,000.
Just your point. So this is actually Kubernetes engine. Google Kubernetes engine is spun up all these different computers here. It's set up all the networking for them, all the firewall rules. It's installing all the software on them right now. And you didn't have to do any of that. But in Iowa right now, it just got a little warmer. All these computers are running because we clicked that button.
You could imagine there could be some previous version of this exam before GKE came into existence, where in order to solve this one thing, you had to create more individual virtual machines, and then each one of those you had to create all the routing and the networking and all this stuff. Now, when we have GKE, it's just like, great, make me one of those, and you can make however many clusters you need. So it's at least simplifying a little bit. Then when you get into managing your GKE cluster, that's a whole can of worms, as I think Marissa can probably speak to now. There's some recent experience with that.
Yes.
It's also here.
Excuse me.
All these firewall rules got added automatically. So just noting there's a bunch of stuff happening behind the scenes. And that's why if it takes time sometimes, that's what's going on. So anyway, I know this one's a little time consuming. Let's try to see if we can deploy our container. All right, so we stop here now. If you have a cluster, you can go into the cluster. And this is a lot easier than it used to be. This used to be a lot of YAML. And we can click deploy. All right, and they told us we should use a certain container. Yeah. Hello. And they want us to pass in 80. That by default, or do I need to put the port? I'm not sure. Oops. I always do this the hard way. That's why.
Are you doing new container image or
Existing container image.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's already.
Okay, are you able to hear me on my computer?
You hear Lucas's beautiful voice.
Okay, so we're gonna use my
All right.
computer for the audio.
My voice
now.
broke my computer. I'm sorry. All we see here is that our service is now deployed. And this view, let me zoom back out to the clusters. These look very similar, but this is the clusters view. These are the clusters we have running. And remember, why do we have a cluster? To run stuff, right? So if we go into the workloads view, we can see the stuff that's running on the cluster, right? This is why we get paid money. So now let's go back over to our lab. I've never done this lab before. Let's see if they like it. Womp womp. All right.
Oh man.
All right. We're in US East 1B. Right.
How do we know it's exposed on port 80, 81?
Ah, okay. Let's go check. Maybe we did that wrong. Okay.
Because you just blindly assumed that it
Oh,
was
oh,
a
there's an expose button.
environment variable.
I'm pretty dumb. Excuse me. So 80.
What's the difference between port 1 and target?
Well, there's
Oh, so
No such
one of them
port.
is probably the port externally that's being exposed, and one of them is
Oh, I see what you mean.
internally. So, like maybe in this scenario, if someone visits port 80 on the outside, then
Yeah.
it's gonna hit port 8080 on the container, something like that.
Yeah. So port 80 is right, the standard port for HTTP calls, right? So if you ever go to HTTP : / that's going to go to 80. To be on 80 probably, right? You're probably running a whole lot of web servers, and that's why we're going to give them different port ranges. And also, port 80 is a reserved range. You have to run as root to bind to port 80. So if you've ever done like a web app locally, it's always on like port 3000 for React, or it's on port 8080 for Java.
So I wonder, did you set it to 80 or to 8080?
8081. 8081 is the magic number,
Yeah, so
right? We want
Were they
8081.
yeah, what was the two numbers? One of them was 80 and the other one was 8081?
Yeah, so the external was 80, and then
But
the
they said
internal.
8081, didn't
Mine
they?
says 80.
Well, no, sorry. So here's an important thing for the
Your
labs.
lab says 8080?
If it's highlighted in yellow, it is different for everybody. Every time you run it, this will change.
That's so you can't copy from someone else's computer.
All right,
Try
come
to
on.
cheat off
Come
Joe.
on. Come on. Whoa.
I changed my port though at the top level to 8080.
Sure. So you're the one at the top level. Let's go back over there.
Yeah,
Great.
so one of those was the one you're exposing, and one of them is the one the container's actually running on.
I know it's kind of confusing. Can I hide this? Let's see. Where is our deployment? Edit. Let's see. Oh, see. So here's what they're hiding from you: the YAML.
Oh, thank goodness we didn't have to touch any of that.
So then
I
here's
love
some-
how, like,
On this all day.
I know. I mean, it's like when Kubernetes came to be a thing, suddenly everyone went from being a software engineer to being a YAML manager. Like, what do you do all day? I write YAML and I read YAML.
So I have to dig in here a little further.
Okay, so
but
see,
here's their
when you
endpoint.
exposed port 80,
All right.
the inside port was port 8081, and
Let's
you
see this.
exposed it on port 80. But I think
But this is
the test was unclear.
So
to
just
me.
just to show you that this stuff is real, right? This is an actual web server running on the public open internet right now. We have made a website that all the peeps in the world can get to
Port
because
80.
on port 80. Now this is highly insecure. Google's going to take this and just set it on fire in a few minutes and get rid of it. This isn't how you should go to the internet, right? Because anybody else sitting outside in a taco truck can intercept this call.
Really? They shut it down after a while?
Yeah. Well, I'll show it to you here when we get to that point. So anyway, we've passed this point, but it is very important to realize that the container, your code running the container, is running on 8081, and then everybody outside of your container is running on 80. And that's why when we went to this website, remember, if you just go to a website, it's on port 80. All right, but we need to do one more thing, right? We don't want to go to HTTP. That's wicked insecure. We want to use a load balancer. And here they're going to give us some cheat codes. All right. What do we got to do here? We're going to make it a load balancer. Oh, this is the old school way to make a load balancer. You want to ensure our environment is fault tolerant. You can make a load balancer, manage instance group of 2. Oh, this is old school. All right. 2 Nginx web servers. All right. Lucas, what are we going to do? I think we need some instances, right? But they said managed instance group. So let's see. Managed instance group. Is there anything like that?
There is instance group.
Instance
or
group?
instance template, I guess. Yeah,
Managed.
instance group.
All right. Let's make an instance group. Managed instance group is called a MIG, by the way. All right. Do we have to give it a name? Doesn't look like it. So Boston Rocks.
So this is going to be, instead of creating a GCE instance, you're going to create a group of n instances. In this case, n is 2. And they're all going to be just based on the same config, right?
Okay, and they give us all the details here. So we can't cheat and use the Kubernetes one. Kubernetes is using instance templates too. Kubernetes isn't magic. It's actually instances, running managed instance groups, running templates. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. Google took care of all that. But if you didn't have Kubernetes, you'd have to make an instance template. Luckily that we got a wizard for that here. So let's see what we got here. Make a instance template, a target pool, a managed instance. Jesus, excuse me. Oh my goodness. A target pool, a managed instance group. All right, here we go.
One thing that Peter pointed out in the chat is that it's because we're doing a quest in Quick Labs that we don't have the immense detailed guidance that comes along with it, because part of it is like the journey of you questing out the answers to how to solve each of these things.
Yeah.
So there's a different Quick Labs lab that you could take that would have like, okay, to make an instance group, do all these steps, and to make a target pool, do all these steps. This one is kind of expecting you to do
this one is far harder.
a little research on your own and figure some stuff out.
Yeah. Cool. And we need to be running, I think we need to run Nginx and a health check. Wow, this is a pretty good pre-assessment.
Yeah, that's why this.
They want you to create an instance template even though you get one already with GKE.
So that the GKE one is a different that is actually what's making your Kubernetes cluster run right now.
Yeah.
If you make more of those, more nodes pop into your Kubernetes cluster. It's not going to make you just arbitrary nodes.
Yeah, so these are separate. These are nodes that are separate from the GKE cluster that are going to perform a load balancer like outside of GKE.
Oh,
So Nginx, all right. And some of this might actually kind of be beyond the time we've allotted, so we'll try to get through this here. But this is throwing you into the diving pool. My apologies here. This is like their pre-assessment thing, so I guess it's pretty hardcore. All right, a target pool, managed instance group, firewall.
target pool is part of the instance template?
Wow, this is like the entire exam in one lab.
Didn't they say this takes 5 hours or something? This
But they
was
only
the
give you
first.
an hour?
No, this is the first of six things.
Oh,
So this is 1 hour of the first.
Yeah, but it's
of
like
5.
313.
Oh, is that like the grade level it is? GSP level 3.
Yeah.
Nice.
a
All right.
target pool, that's not a resource, that's a.
No, so we'll show you in a second. Let me just what I was going to show you here, that if we're taking this from the top, so we're going to make I'll back out here a second. We went in and we're going to make an instance group, and now we need to make an instance template, because an instance group is going to make a bunch of machines that are fed from your template that you created. It's going to make a bunch of stuff just like this. So we'll put the Red Sox Nginx. And now if we scroll down, they're going to let us deploy a container here, right? We can keep it simple, and we're just going to deploy an Nginx container. And is Nginx one in here? Let's see. Is that an existing container? I'm not sure. Try it out. And then they're going to give us the key thing to give us here. This is a startup script. And anytime you create a virtual machine, sometimes you don't just want it to start up and do nothing, right? It's just going to be a computer sitting there or nobody logged into it. It's not very useful. But a startup script is a little hack you get where you can provide some bash, and it's going to run that when it turns on. So this script here is going to say it's going to update your repository. apt-get is how you install stuff in Linux. And then it's going to turn on Nginx. And then it's going to pull in some additional parameters here. It's going to basically change the configuration file. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say they're probably running like the same image. What do you think? So the commands here are where we're going to put our startup command. Actually, no. Startup commands look good. That's just for VMs, right?
Command would be in for the container. That would be the command that you run when you go into the container.
Yeah, so this should be like a straight up VM, I think.
Yeah, I think you're not running a VM, a container. I think you're just gonna have a VM and install Nginx on it.
So sorry, forget the container piece. If we go down here, there should be under advanced, excuse me, management, maybe. I think it's, there we go, startup script. So we're going to paste our startup script down here. And again, this is old school. This is straight virtual machines. So to recap, we went to the instance group, new template, and we're going to paste this in down here under the startup script. And one thing I was looking at is we might want to make these small. There's a note in that lab about not using too many resources. So I'm probably going to go with like a small instance. The smaller the stuff you allocate, also the faster it will start up.
That's a very good point.
And I want to see about the networking rules. Yeah, okay. So I think we're good. Let me save and continue here.
So this is an instance group. So it'll be a group of one or more instances that all have the same basic set of settings.
Yep.
Cool.
Do you need a named port on this one? Oops.
Journey and that you've seen, even people who have been doing this for a while as their primary job. Some of these, can be a little challenging because when was the last time you created an Nginx server? And so you have to figure some stuff out. And yeah, there's a chance you won't solve every one of these the first time around in the time allotted, especially if you pick a particularly challenging one that expects you to already know everything. But I think that I'm excited because everyone who attended, even the folks who've already left the online event, they all got into Quick Labs. So that's done. They've seen what it looks like going through one of these labs, and they can spend more time at home doing that, trying to use up all